Mike Lindstrom checking in. What's Your Story podcast, episode number 6. Hard to believe. Scott and I were flying by here every week. We got Nick Capozzi sitting down with us, CRO of Soma Peptides, influencer, digital marketer, longevity expert. A lot of people have been asking me about that. What's this longevity biohacking? Like, what are people doing around this in 2025 going into the next year to take full control of their health and fitness? And Nick's going to talk about that on our podcast. Very important topic. Cut his teeth in sales out of Montreal on cruise ships, by the way. We were fascinated, Scott and I, with his stories about human behavior, studying people. Have you ever been on a cruise ship? I know I've been on a cruise ship. A captive audience. That's where he was selling things, watches, jewelries, liquor, anything, art, you name it, that happens on a cruise ship, and got it down to a science on a cruise ship for all those years, and then took that science that he figured out and brought into his corporate world and his passions. And fast forward, that's where he is at now with longevity and biohacking. So we're really excited. Big personality, fun guy, super well-spoken, has amazing stories. Excited to have him on, and it's hard to believe that we're already on episode 6. Tune in and enjoy. Nick Capozzi.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? I'm Scott Leese, here with my good friend and co-host Mike Lindstrom, coming out live from Scottsdale, Arizona area. And we're going to talk to a friend of mine.
I know. We get to switch it up in case you guys haven't figured it out. We know we swap chairs a little bit. So you get to be
go back and
point
forth.
guard a little bit.
Yeah, give me the rock.
I love it, man. That's the rock.
It's my time. It's my time. We're talking to a Canadian today.
I know.
I don't know. Yeah, he moved all the way out here from Montreal.
Right? We have mutual friends. It's funny how that works in Arizona. You're always at least 1 to 2 degrees removed.
Well,
You'll learn
in
that
particular seem to know everybody in.
Well, I know the people that know the people. That's all. That's what it really is.
Well, we're here with a friend of mine. His name is Nick Capozzi. He's got an incredible story coming from Canada into the Valley. But before that, spent a lot of time on cruise ships, selling on cruise ships.
I can't wait to hear about this.
Jewelry, art, all this kind of stuff. He's got some wild stories. Maybe we'll get into. Then he got into tech. Then he ran his own video production company for a while. And then he took a hard pivot into sort of life extension, biohacking type stuff, which you know I love. I'm all about this kind of stuff. So, Nick Capozzi, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, guys? Nice to be here. I thought this was surf and sales, so I wore flip-flops. But
That's all right. That's all right.
The hat. He thought it was the hat. We're talking
hat,
about What's Your Story today, man.
The hat follows me where I go,
That's
even
true.
if the show is
so I've been
a
seeing you
little bit
wearing my Expos hat lately.
I have been. Yeah. And I upgraded my Buffalo Bills hat, too, which
Bills Mafia.
We talked about that. All right, so we start off every show by just asking people one simple question, the premise of the whole show. What's your story? So however you want to kind of take that, personally, professionally, tell us what your story.
You know, the short version is I'm an Italian guy from Montreal, and if you know Italian guys from Montreal, that's all you need to know.
You're the only Italian guy from Montreal that I know, so you got to give me a little more than that.
Add me to the list. I'm not. Same thing for me.
No, you know, Montreal was a great place to grow up. I mean, it really was, because what's really interesting about Montreal, it's this hybrid of a North American and European city. You know, I'd argue that Quebec City is more European, but being in Montreal, you kind of had the best of both worlds, and I think through everything I've done, that's been a real advantage to me. And then I've kind of had this wild story where I just kept saying yes to things, you know, yes to a certain college program, yes to certain jobs. And I like to think that if I, you know, God forbid, got hit by a bus tomorrow, I've lived 3 or 4 lifetimes. That was metal. I've lived 3 or 4 lifetimes already in my life at my age. So, yeah, man, I think that's the Coles Notes version.
So there's been a bunch of chapters to your life. I want to start with the cruise experience chapter. That was one of the first stories that you told me that I was like, this guy's super interesting. I got to know more about this kind of cruise stuff. So what were you selling? What was it like?
So before I tell you that chapter, I'll give you the foreword to the book. Was as a kid, I knew I wanted to work in radio. I was going to be the play-by-play voice of the Montreal Expos. They moved to Washington. I got what could I do? But what was great about going to Humber College for radio in Toronto was it was like basically 2 years of how to ad-lib and how to speak. And I was in radio and TV for 3 or 4 years in Toronto. And then my dad never did this, but I was living with my dad at the time, and he said, hey, the neighbor's having a party. You got to come over and say hello to him. So I went over, and his brothers were there from Miami, and it came up, Nick is in radio. They go, radio? Can you do that on a stage? Next thing I know, I step onto a cruise ship in New York, and I'm on my way to Bermuda. And I spent about a decade living at sea, like where most of the year I lived on a ship for about a decade. And first job I had was selling art. And it was really interesting. I knew nothing about art. But there was two skills that they needed because all these sales jobs on ships had like an 85% attrition rate. Like it was within the first month, you were the one out of, 5 or you were out. And there was two key components. One was, could you build relationships with guests quickly? And being an Italian guy from Montreal, that was easy. But I didn't know how to sell. But because people liked me and my energy, people would buy from me. And at the time, cruising was still a bit luxurious. And for someone to like peel off 5K for a painting, they would do it just because they liked this 24-year-old kid, right? So I was selling these prints of like these signed Dalis and these Peter Maxes. Didn't love the art, but I did it originally as a lark to skip a winter. And I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm never spending another winter in Canada again. Which is part of the reason I live in Arizona now. But where I really kind of made hay was my next job was selling jewelry. Again, no background in jewelry, but it was a lot of stage presenting. And we were a third-party company that basically worked with the cruise line promoting the duty-free. And you don't think much of duty-free, but it's the $750 million business in the Caribbean that no one knows about.
That's crazy.
It's huge. So we were these kids, and what was happening was we would get you on board with the idea of what duty free was, and then we had like 50 brands all paying by the second for representation. And what was interesting was these were like big European brands, like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy brands, Richemont brands, and I remember I had a CEO from a major watch, like one of the biggest watch companies in the world, in like 2000 say to me, Nick, at a conference, Nick, I know how to sell in Dubai, Rome, and Tokyo. I don't know how to sell to Nancy from Nebraska. So we were these 20-year-old kids who had this authority to write these stories, write these narratives. And I would pitch these duty-free shopping excursions, and depending on the cruise line, and I worked on like 8 of them, they all had different titles, port shopping guide or shopping consultant. But I could get you over the hump of what duty-free was, and duty-free makes sense. Okay, I'll shop duty-free. And we'd get you in on like the entry-level stuff, which was like, Blue Mountain coffee from Jamaica, or here's why you have to get Mexican vanilla from Mexico. But we were really selling Swiss watches and high-end brands. And we'd have like 15 different Swiss watch brands. And again, these 20-year-old kids were writing these distinct stories to get everyone in the audience to kind of pick their own brand out of those 15 and try and hit our numbers those ways. So it was this unbelievable experience. And I think the biggest learning for me is you've heard the 10,000 hour rule.
Sure. Yeah.
I have over 10,000 hours on a stage in front of 500 to 1,000 people. And I think what's really interesting was, I learned very quickly. I wish I could learn how to train this skill, but I can't. But it's in me innately now. If I saw one section of the crowd moving to something I said, I knew I had East Coast. If I had this crowd, I had the West Coast. When I had the whole crowd moving, it means I had America. And now that was my default of what I would say every week.
Wow.
So it was really crazy. And it's a $750 million industry that no one's heard about, this cruise ship.
Incredible skill to read the crowd
Yeah.
like that.
We love journaling, and you can see how we journal prep. You're talking about scripting, writing.
Yep.
No, you're trying to create success leaves clues. You're modeling things. Did you ever keep track of this stuff? You still have some of the old journal scripts? I mean, were you doing that?
It's practically tattooed on me. So what was interesting was, again, 20-year-olds. So we would meet in Miami on whoever was in port together. We'd get together. Shelby Hastings Rojas, Sandra Fernandez, Dave Nanny, and we'd go to a Starbucks and we'd say, Dave, how many bottles of Johnny Walker Blue did you sell this week? 50. What did you say? And what would happen is one week I would pitch something. I'd say 18 words, pause here, call to action there. The next week, I'd only say 12 words, no call to action, but I'd tell a story and my numbers jumped. So we were email was just coming out and you couldn't get Hotmail on a cruise ship because there was no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So we were like kids in port, in St. Thomas, in St. Lucia, writing notes to each other, leaving strategies behind. And it was the wildest thing. And it was all under this guy, and I'll hat tip him, because to this day, he's still one of the greatest marketers I've ever met, a guy named Shane Turner. And he was like this puppet master for this huge company in the early 2000s. And, you think of like, if you've been in an industry through like a golden era, I've been in a lot of really cool industries. I was in this golden era for like 3-4 years at the zenith of when this was the biggest thing in the world with some of the greatest minds. And it was the best learning experience I ever had.
I want to ask you a question about, you said something about you were on a cruise ship for the better part of a year, for 10 years or so.
Yep.
Logistically, what do you do with your mainland? Like, what do you do with your stuff? Do you keep an apartment?
I don't have stuff. You
don't keep an apartment? You have nothing.
I would couch surf. I'd stay with my dad. I would, because it was basically like 6 months on, 2 months off. So I'd go work hard for 6 months. I had nowhere to spend money. I didn't have a car. I didn't have insurance. I didn't have a cell phone.
Saving.
I was I paid off my student loans in 18 months. It was just, and the way they used to pay us was a little envelope. We'd go down to the staff bar every 2 weeks, and it was a little envelope just filled with cash.
Cash.
That's how it was back in the day.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
And so it was just this unbelievable experience. And you would meet people from all over the world. I remember I worked on, I think, 36 or 37 different cruise ships. There was one of them where there was over 100 different nationalities represented in the crew. So it was a true Tower of Babel, you know? And coming from Canada, which was so multicultural in Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver, it was, easy for me. And that was part of the reason they were purposely looking for Canadians, was because of the multicultural background. So a lot of the front of house roles were Canadians. Everyone's like, where's the Americans? And the staff would say, they don't want to work here because they want to put in the hours of the time. Because I was working every day, like 180 days straight. Then I'd have 2 months off. And what I would do is I'd land at the airport, wherever I was going back to in Canada, and I would go up to the desk. Like they still used to sell tickets in 2000 at the airport desks. And I'd go up to them and say, do you have industry rates? And they're like, oh, what airline? I'm like, I'm with Royal Caribbean. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll give it to you. And I'm like, what's the cheapest flight to Europe tomorrow night? And they'd be like, you can go to Lisbon for $329 or Amsterdam for $369. Amsterdam, here we go.
Wow.
And you'd bum around for a couple months. And now I got friends in South Africa and Australia and Hungary. I mean, I still to this day have this network of friends. I'm only still on Facebook because that's where the whole cruise community is.
That's hilarious.
And I could wind up in any country and have someone I could go have dinner with.
That's so cool. You're talking about this Nancy from Nebraska, which I think that's awesome. But being American, you obviously have West Coast, East Coast. In your mind at the time, I mean, now you have so much history and AI and everything, you can figure that out. But in your mind, you think, okay, this guy's from LA. She's from New York. This is Nancy from Nebraska. Did you have a certain thread that it's like, no matter what, it's facts tell, stories sell? Was there a certain formula, no matter what? Because Americans were Americans, or what was your take on that as a young man?
It was about regionalization. And this is something I would train, because a lot of I was quickly identified as a trainer. So I was developing people very early, people from Serbia and people from India. And how do they connect to someone from Mississippi versus someone from Idaho? And what I would get them to open with is, where are you from? Oh, you're from X, and then pick something you're into. And my default was always food. Oh, you're from Mississippi? I haven't been yet, but if I go to Mississippi, what's the one thing I should eat? Oh, hush puppies and catfish. Well, now that kid from India has that in his Rolodex. You need 50 of them, there's 50 states. Has in his Rolodex of his own, where are you from, Mississippi? I've never been, but I heard catfish and hot puppies is where it's at. And right away now, this Indian guy had built a bridge to this American. So I would teach regionalization. And that's part of how, when I first got on LinkedIn, one of the things I was coaching is like, there's 25 major US cities that you're selling into. What do you know about Denver? What do you know about Dallas? What can you get on a phone and say, check the score of the game last night, of the hockey game. If you're talking to someone from Chicago, they know the Blackhawks score.
Yeah.
So true.
At some point, your story has to evolve, and it's like, I don't want to be on a ship for 6 months straight.
Yeah.
It gets too much or too tiresome or too whatever, just too much. You pick tech sales, give it a go.
Tech picked me.
Well, tell us about that.
So I got off ships and had no plan. And I knew nothing about technology whatsoever. I didn't know what an SDR was. I didn't know what a KPI was. I knew nothing about, modern selling. But what I did was I just started randomly posting videos on LinkedIn about what I knew, which was sales presentation skills. Again, those 10,000 hours on the stage, right? And this is just as COVID had hit.
Yeah.
And SaaS picked me up, liking, commenting. VPs of sales started calling me saying, can you coach us in a Zoom room?
Yeah, we like your videos, right?
How do I build rapport in a Zoom with cameras off? How do I do that with everyone working from home? And that was my in. And I didn't know how to price it. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, $1,500 here. Let me try 15,000. That didn't work. And I started doing these little coaching things where I would go in and basically kind of coach soft skills. Is really what it was.
Which we're missing.
Still are.
Still are, yeah, but we're definitely missing.
It's coming back, man. We're
COVID.
coming back. I swear, even AI, we're coming back.
And I started getting invited to the events and on stage. And Nick, you have this such a unique B2C sale. how do we act more B2C and B2B? And actually, Andy Paul was such a gentleman. He really noted what I was doing, had me on his podcast, which really changed things for me. And he'd tell me about being more human, Nick, and how did you build relationships on cruise? And everyone wanted to hear about the cruise ship stories and how that related to tech sales, right? So the universe kind of like opened up for me in a beautiful way. And then I put a post up on LinkedIn after a couple years of consulting because I was institutionalized from cruise ships of having 1,000 at-bats a day with guests. Sometimes a head nod, sometimes a good morning, sometimes a 30-minute conversation, trying to marry me off to their granddaughter. And now it's COVID. I'm by myself consulting from a Zoom. I was going squirrely. So I put a post up and I said, I want to be part of a team. I want to do something unique. You guys see what I do with content and soft skills. Where do I fit? And Kristen Kopinski from DemoStack reached out. She was on my calendar within 30 minutes of that post. Became the head of storytelling at DemoStack, and I traveled the country at all the shows, and all I did was, being the radio guy, I was interviewing people, so I would get contact for DemoStack, and then it'd say, okay, Scott, I did this with you. Stand to the side, Scott. Now let's talk about you. I'm off camera, but I was pulling, the radio interviewer was pulling to highlight you, and that was super successful, and that was amazing. And then from there, what happened was, as well as that was going, everyone was like, man, dude, how do we do video like you? And video was just really starting to get traction on LinkedIn. And I had about 100 grand in contracts and no team. Found two young guys, Ben and Aaron, beautiful boys from Indiana. Convinced them to move to Phoenix. We launched Splice Video, took off. I was floored at how much we sold, how quickly. It was really like a beautiful thing. And then about a year ago, we completely shut it down, because I saw what was coming with AI, and people, I cannot tell you how many of my friends called me, yelled at me, what are you doing? Where are you? You're off LinkedIn. You're not doing Splice anymore. And I was seeing what was coming with AI. And
well, elaborate on that for people who are outside of the tech bubble, and and they don't know necessarily what I saw what was coming with AI means. First of all, what do you think is coming or is here already? And how did it impact your conviction so much that you shut down this thing that was super successful very fast?
So a couple things. One is that I think what I had was this innate ability to tell stories from just having rep hundreds, if not 1,000 brands over the years on cruise ships, quickly looking at something and how do we turn, because they'd come, new season, Nick, here's 60 new products. So every week we're on stage. We were A/B testing with 4,000 cruisers coming on Saturday, 4,000 the next week. And tech was not great at telling their stories with content, right? So it started off as just phone calls of, hey, how would we do this? Hey, how do we then tell this story? And there was a lot of great creators like, Will Aitken and people like that who were making this great content, but they were doing it more highlighting themselves or like Sales Feed, where Will was at the time. And I was like going into these companies and saying, hey, Dell, I can do this for you, right? I can make you look good. And I thought it was going to be more about kind of creative content, but what kind of the market wanted from us was the interviewing. So we did a lot of events where we would, they would have me line up 10 CEOs at a CEO-only event, and they would all get 5 or 10 minutes with me, and I would pull out the story of their brand or the story of their go-to-market strategy or the story of how I came up with this tool or feature or whatever it was. And, we worked with like really big companies, like the logos we were getting, and I didn't even know how to go in and negotiate these, right? Because it was all new to me. I probably texted you way more than I did. You're always a gentleman with me. And I still think there's a massive opportunity with video and content. But from a B2B perspective, I was now a year ago getting into all these conversations of, well, why am I going to pay you to do this? I can use this AI tool that's coming out. The AI tool was shit, but the horizon was obvious to me.
What was the AI tool?
Like Opus Clips was one of the first ones that like people would challenge. And
it's
like,
good now. I use Opus now. It was much different a year and a half ago. I mean, by the minute, it's getting faster.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
But back then, it was like, hey, I'm trying to charge X for this, or hey, we want you to come. Can you fly your whole team to Seattle for a day and interview our executives? Well, here's the price. Well, we don't want to pay that. I'll hire someone off, Right. And you get what you pay for. And if you wanted premium, that's what we were known for, is like the highest end video.
Yeah.
But I saw when Google VO3 came out about, let's say 6 weeks ago now, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, because that's what I saw coming. And now I could actually turn around to my buddies who gave me so much and say, this is what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I'm not good at, but if I have one kind of skill that I don't know where it came from or if it's innate, I can always see the market 2 or 3 years before it's coming. You know, where the energy is moving, I have this ability to see.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. You know, okay, so little quick story. You got lit up on a post about putting a little circle around your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Open to hire.
Yeah.
Okay. He told me, man, you see my post? Without knowing, I commented, wrote some stuff. I got lit up separately, my whole crowd. This guy, in his own way, somehow puts it out there without a circle around it a couple of years ago and says, hey, I am who I am. Here's what I'm looking to do. And there's this dichotomy of, do you just put a big circle around it nowadays and say, hey, I'm open to hire? Because you pretty much did that without the circle, and you get people calling you saying, hey, whoa, we got something we want to do with you. So what's the line? I mean, if you're coaching someone now in 2025 that wants to put themselves out there because they did what you did and it worked out, so now what?
So I think the answer to that, and one of the great mentors I had, Christine Rogers, who's a great mutual friend of you and I, who's here locally. She's the CEO of M3 Learning. She is a gem. She was the first to kind of identify that I had a very different vibe than most people in tech. I'm kind of this gregarious East Coast Italian guy from Montreal and all that comes with that, with tattoos. And I'd roll up to like events in baseball hats, or like roll up, wrap my truck in like demo stack stuff and just pick people up and road trip across the country with people, right? No one was doing that. And I think the thing is, when everyone is homogenized and everyone is going in the same direction, how can you be the fish going in the other direction? And you know, it's a silly thing, but I always think of one of the cruise lines I worked with, which is a great brand, is Norwegian. And for years, their whole marketing was the carpets in their hallways where all the fish were going the other way, except the Norwegian one, because they did things differently. And that always kind of stuck with me, right? How can I be a little bit different than everyone else? If everyone else is vanilla, how can I be, you know, chocolate, right? And I think that's what worked for me. And there was, you know, many times where I took big risks and big gambles.
Yeah.
And a couple times I called Christina and I say, should I post this? And she said, you're like the one guy I think that could pull off posting this and get away with it. You know, so I think that's it. I think it's, and you know, I was talking to someone else today and they're like, how do I do that? And I'm like, I think I'm just authentic to me. And I think most people are afraid, especially like in corporate, and you have to be a certain way. SaaS is a small community. It's
very small, yeah.
It's a big, very small community. So, but I came in with kind of a different edge than everyone else, and I think that really worked to my advantage. But that's what I tell people now. I was talking to a buddy of mine who does mortgages today, and I said, look, just be authentic to you. What do you do differently than everyone else, you know? Like there's this, no one's buying houses right now because everyone's into these locked-in mortgage rates, right? But there's this one woman on TikTok. She's hilarious. She's like a 30-year-old realtor. I know she's 30 because she says it all the time, from Tampa. And all it is comedy. She's showing off these houses, but she's so funny. And I said to the guy this morning, I said, the first time she pitched that to one of her homeowners, I'm going to do this crazy video about your home. The first one that said yes sold their home and sold it at a premium because she was doing what no one else was doing. It wasn't about the house. It was about comedy and the story, right?
Yeah, and that is something that I've admired about you, your willingness to take risks and swim against the grain. And you're in this field now, life extension, biohacking kind of stuff, which you and I have talked about many times before. I'm getting more and more into this stuff with all my health issues and whatnot. It's not really mainstream yet. It's kind of poised to become mainstream. Right. And you've got this vision and ability to see where things are headed.
Yep.
And so you went here. So tell us what that is all about for people who don't know what's going on in this field.
Absolutely. So first thing I want to be very cautious of, I am not a doctor, as my background can attest to. I barely passed grade 9 biology, which was the last science class I had to take. But one of my best friends in the world is a guy named Elias Arjan, cruise ship guy from Vancouver who wound up in LA and got into longevity about 8 years ago when it was more called biohacking. And I think originally it was called biohacking, then it became longevity, and now it's health span. And the best way to articulate health span is, when I'm 80, can I live like when my dad was 50? Which I think is very achievable, right? So I'm not trying to live forever. Brian Johnson, if you've heard of Brian, he gets like 100 million Google hits a month. don't die is this whole brand, trying to live forever.
Yeah.
I don't think I think it's, can I live really healthy? And when I look at like a lot of boomers out there, a lot of people that I know that I'm close to who are not living a healthy life, I'm like, well, how can I've already got 7 or 8 great chapters of interesting stories. How can I write more chapters?
We're of that age where we need to start.
Yeah, no, you're right. We've
Thinking
been
and working
talking
on
about
this
this.
stuff.
We've been, the last couple of days, we spent a lot of time talking about this stuff.
So we said SaaS was a big, small community. HealthSpan is a tiny, big community. And there's a guy named Dave Asprey who really kind of brought it to the forefront.
I said he's definitely going to know Dave.
Yeah, I know. I worked for Dave briefly. Great guy. He launched one of the biggest events, which is Biohacking. Still, that's where everyone goes, is every year in
just had it.
Boston. I was there. That's a fair estimate.
Yeah, well, I follow him. We're friends from the old school, like I would say from afar, but I follow him. I love his stuff. And I've seen what he's done in no time flat. From the beginning of one, people were laughing at him going, Dave's being Dave. He's doing that crazy stuff again. Now he's got 4,500 some people representing. And these are brands coming in. These aren't just people like...
These are the biggest brands in the space.
Not just drinking Kool-Aid. They're looking to really learn about this stuff and be in that space.
So Elias Arjan was kind enough to bring me in because, we started just, Nick, you should come and see what's happening here because there's no go-to-market people in the space. They're all scientists.
Yeah.
And what I learned when I was interviewing the tech CEOs, I could help a technical CEO tell their story. Now I'm just helping a scientific person tell their story. So I originally went in content, realized there was no business people, and I have a little bit of business background. So I started doing like fractional CRO work and helping these brands. I tell people, my friends in software who are like, Nick, you built Splice. How'd you turn a side hustle into a business? I said, you can too. If you're in software, if you're selling, marketing, helping customers succeed, you're in 2027. You're working with the best tech, the best people, the best ideas. If I go to the largest roofing company in Arizona, they're maybe in 2015. So when I come in with like sales strategy that I learned from you via Thursday Night Sales, truly, I look like a magician in these spaces. So in the HealthSpan space, there's no setup of anything, right? But these people have 1 million followers and people are paying attention. What I'm trying to navigate, and this is why having someone like Elias, who owns a company called Proven, which does scientific validation, he's really been my eyes in the space because a lot of companies will say, Nick, we see you getting traction with companies. We want to work with you. And Elias will say, you can't work with them. Snake oil, unvalidated claims, that you can work with. Let me get you the studies off PubMed to validate that. You can work with them, Nick. So Elias has been...
Because that's what the public is concerned about or
and you should
the hesitation is like, I don't know about that. I don't know about this. How do I know it's legit, right?
But there are things happening that I can't fully get my head around. So my father died a year ago of ALS.
Yeah.
After a 7-year battle with it. We were lucky we had him that long. And when I first got into the space, I was seeing some scientific researchers who now I acknowledge were getting traction. And in some ways, we're helping people. I'm not making a claim. I'm just telling you what I observed. I am not a scientist. I'm claiming nothing. But stuff that was so interesting that I told one of these scientists to his face, this very reputable guy, I said, you're a snake oil salesman. Couldn't help it. I had scar tissue around that particular topic of ALS. And he's showing me people who are having interesting things, let's say. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why can't I get stem cells in the U.S.? Why do I gotta go to Tijuana to get stem cells? Well, that can't be legitimate if I can't get it in Atlanta or I can't get it in Seattle. And then I realized, not to, a lot of people who own the food that we're eating own the pharmaceuticals that we're getting at the end, right? So I really started to see the system. And I started to see, I think, alternative medicine as like real options. And not that it's for everyone or, certain things for certain people. But boy, is it interesting. And it's just a great space to be in because I feel like when I was in software, I was ahead of the rest of the world in terms of business. And now I feel when it comes to health, I'm ahead of the rest of the world in terms of what I'm seeing.
You know, the one thing about Dave, and he's done great stuff. I love him. I think he's great. I know some
Danger
people,
Coffee. Go buy a bag.
Yeah, I love him. He educates, though. See, people can laugh, and he did this. I mean, he was very open. He went and had face work, and he put it right on camera. He goes, hey, man. I'm getting older, so I'm going to make myself look good. I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm not going to hide it and bullshit you. But he's educating you along the way. We had Susan Huang, who's one of the largest dispensary owners in cannabis here in this chair. In the cannabis industry, from 12 years, she's like, educate. You got to educate because everyone thinks, oh, it's marijuana. It's marijuana. It's pot. It's the same type of thing when you look at longevity or biohacking. If people like you or David are going out there and you're educating people about it, it's going to happen. There's going to be a hitch where they go, wait a minute, this guy's been talking about this for a while. This isn't like some new thing. It's not snake oil. This is something that's going to click. How quickly do you see that happening?
The problem is, from my point of view, is I advise the brands I work with, you want to own your media and be the educator in the space. There's a brand that I cannot work with because they don't need me because they're so good. It's called Fatty 15, fatty15.com. Dr. Stephanie found the third fatty acid that no one knew about. It's by studying dolphins, and it's legit science. But they own the science in that anything about the science, they're just educating people with their own information about science. And then, by the way, if you want to buy Fatty 15, you can go ahead and buy Fatty 15. Most brands aren't doing that. They're using influencers. And the problem is now I don't know what's real and what's not.
Because it's just pushing product.
It's pushing product.
That's right.
Versus there are real health options here. And I think, the one that the big domino that is going to fall, that is going to change everything is peptides. You might have heard of the first peptide, insulin, right? These are small chain amino acids that signal your body to do certain things, whether it's release growth hormone or, some can help. I don't want to make claims because again, but a very interesting space. And I liken it to, it's like getting into marijuana 20 years ago, except everyone had an opinion about marijuana 20 years ago. No one has an opinion about peptides because they don't know what they are.
They don't know anything about it.
So we can write the narrative.
Yeah.
But we can't write the narrative because we can't really talk about it. So it's this gray area that I'm kind of gently trying to feel my way around. But I think that that's the future is peptides.
You talk about stem cells. You talk about peptides.
Yep.
For people listening,
Yep.
and you have the opportunity to educate us and educate the audience.
Our friends, yeah.
What's like one or two real simple things that they can incorporate into their life or small changes that they could make that have interesting results
That they probably don't know already.
that they don't know already? Yeah.
So here's how when people ask me that, this is where I like to go. Let's say most Americans are 50% healthy-ish. And
That's very generous.
I'm being generous.
Very.
Very generous.
Very.
To get to 80, this is not hard. All it is, it might not be 10,000, 5,000 to 10,000 steps a day. Get up and move, right? If you can't walk that much in the day, get up and walk for 10 minutes after you eat, because that will stop your glucose from spiking. Another thing that's really interesting too, you can get a glucose patch because everyone absorbs their food differently. So for some people, if you eat your carbs before you eat your protein versus the other way around, you won't have a glycemic spike. So you're in a better position. So walking, getting a little bit of walking in, and if you can only do it after a meal, after a meal. Next one is eat whole foods. I mean, if I can't go to a regular grocery store in Arizona and there's nothing I can buy in every aisle because everything is processed, right? So I'll go to Whole Foods, or there's a great chain on the West Coast called Sprouts, which is very well priced competitively, and I pretty much don't shop anywhere else. And it's not perfect, but they do a lot of things right. So I think just being aware of what you're eating, right? Whole Foods, we were taught fat is bad for you, protein is bad. It's not. I mean, protein first. And I often tell people, there's also inflammation is a really key thing. So what you want to do is, if you can't eat grass-fed beef and pasture-raised chicken, that's going to be so much better for you than anything you buy at the big box stores or at the regular grocery stores. But you want to make sure it's really, because it's going to create less inflammation. And inflammation is really what's killing us here, right?
The piece that is most exciting to me is this personalized medicine component.
Yep.
Right, and it's you talked about this patch, and it's like, well, some people need to eat this thing first, and Nick needs to eat the other thing first. And right now, there's no prescriptive guideline like that. And I think the more that this stuff becomes public, the more science is behind it, the more AI enables scientists to get this stuff done. That's going to be a huge tipping point, I think, where it's.
I see more and more doctors. I want you to speak on this. I see more and more of my friends that are doctors getting out of traditional medicine and going in that direction, going concierge medicine, saying, "I want to meet you where you're at." I'm not, right.
So interesting. I went to the Super Bowl at Peptides last year, and someone from their organization kept sending me these doctors, and I'm like, "What are you sending me these people for?" They were all these insurance-paid doctors who wanted to go into functional medicine or integrative medicine, cash-pay medicine, right? Concierge medicine. There was no people doing the business of that. So there's 1 million medical doctors in America. There's about 68,000 who fall under this functional medicine, I think, is a nice way. Integrative medicine is a nice way to think about it. Cellular medicine. So if you can find a really well-reviewed functional medicine doctor, you'll probably pay $400 for initial consultation, maybe $150 every time you go in after. Traditional doctors are the Band-Aid. They're solving an existing problem. These doctors are future-facing, trying to keep you healthy now. My health, I was better than 50% healthy-ish. I'm probably like 95% healthiest, to the point like my cholesterol was not crazy high, but high enough that my regular doctor would have said statins. My functional health doctor was like, no, we're going to put you on this natural derivative. I'm not going to say because I don't want to, again, prescribe anything. Sure. My cholesterol got so low, he's like, you need to eat some ice cream. Okay, avocados is
Twist
better.
my arm.
I know, avocados is better. Eat avocados, eat some nuts, but you can have ice cream because my cholesterol, like, it went to 130. And it's like, no, that's too low. You got it, like, from like 220 to 130. He's like, you got to get that up. But, you know, I am fitter. You know, I'm going to be 49 next week. I am fitter, healthier than I've ever been. You know, I go, you know, I still play sports and stuff. I'm running circles around like some 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as we wrap up here, let's talk about what you're working on right now, where you're headed. Let's give you a chance to kind of promote, if you will.
So what I'll tell you is I am patiently waiting to see where things fall with peptides, because I think that's where I will wind up. Right now, I'm just doing some fractional work. But if you want to learn more about this, the HealthSpan Summit, which is taking place in Los Angeles, healthspanevents.com. That's where Elias, he's been my Scott Leese in this space.
Great.
I'll be a ton of great speakers. Dr. Seeds is going to be there, who is the guru of peptides in America. And here's what I'll tell you, because I've done this a lot, and you think a million people take me up on it. If you're watching this, somehow you'll have my information here.
Yep.
Reach out to me, ping me. You want to talk for 20 minutes, and I'll help you find a great functional health doctor. Or
Love it.
He'll respond. I taught him that.
Yeah.
Love it.
One thing I taught him, probably.
Tell me a few things. Actually, I'll tell you one last quick story. You know, a funny story, because we had never met, and I was going to Austin, and Christine Rogers, again, who's been a mentor to me, said, you got to go meet Scott. And I said, I don't know, Scott. She goes, I'll get you an intro. And you canceled on me at the last minute when I was already in Austin. So I said, no problem. Let me know where to show up with this $300 worth of Franklin barbecue. And you said, you're bribing me with food. And you gave me the meeting after I showed up with the barbecue.
True.
But I asked.
Not above bribery. It's
a great story.
I don't remember what happened, but
Come bearing gifts. But I asked you on the porch that day, after I told you the cruise ship story and the radio story, I said, what do you do with a guy like me? Right? What do you do with a guy like me? And you gave me some great advice that day. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate you very much.
That's awesome.
Thanks for being a part of the show.
That's awesome. Thanks.
A great story, right?
Kick ass.
Yeah, it's great.
You know what's weird is that the last few guests we've had, it's like the couch. Maybe it's something about that chair. Everyone's going through a chapter in their life, or a change, or some health transformation. It's like almost 100% with yes. There's something about that chair.
That's the beautiful thing about allowing people to tell their story.
Absolutely.
That story is evolving. It's a living, breathing thing all the time.
Great. I love it, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for listening. We thank Nick Capozzi, Mike Lindstrom here, Scott Leese. We'll see you next time on What's Your Story?